Welcome to AUDL Weekly. This is another playoff episode of the show, all about ultimate stories, perspectives, conversations, and more. I'm Evan Lepler, and I'm back from DC after seeing the Breeze take care of business in the opening round of the AUDL playoffs this past Saturday night. And I'm super excited to follow the Breeze to New York to see if they can upset the undefeated Empire this coming Saturday night. It's truly the best time of year in the AUDL. And we got an excellent episode of Weekly for you here this evening. Coming up, Adam and Daniel are going to have to agree to disagree on a number of playoff topics that they'll discuss in toss-up. And later on, a brand new Upline and Out of Bounds. Matt Smith interviews Colorado's Joe Anderson, better known in the Ultimate world as Joe Smash. He's had a legendary career. I'm pumped to hear his conversation with Matt. But coming up next, it's a beautiful day for a toss, and I've got all the details on the 3 playoff games that transpired across the league this past weekend. You're watching AUDL Weekly on AUDL.tv, so stick around. All right, welcome back. If you're watching this, you probably already know that all 3 home teams got the job done in their playoff matchups this past weekend. But hopefully you'll understand a little bit better why those teams won after this segment. Let's start in DC, where the 10-2 Breeze battled the 6-6 Phoenix. And early on in this contest, you could have told me that the records were reversed. The Phoenix were the team that kind of looked like the favorite in the first quarter. Philadelphia scored with ease on their first handful of possessions. DC struggled offensively at the outset. But here's the thing. The Phoenix just could not capitalize on their first quarter break chances. And then from the second quarter on, DC found its rhythm on both O and D. Breeze got back-to-back breaks midway through the second quarter, opened up an 11-8 lead, and Philly mustered just 1 break and 5 chances for the game. So DC ended up winning all 4 quarters in their 23-18 win at Carlini Field. Breeze had a season-low 8 turnovers as they moved on to create another showdown against New York coming up this Saturday night. Really a balanced effort for the Breeze overall. Defensively, they did a lot of good things over the final 3 quarters. And look, Philly, I think, earned a great deal of respect with the way they played over the final 3 quarters of the season and what they did in parts of the game on Saturday night. But the fact remains, still a gap between the Phoenix and the top 2 in the East. So DC prevails by 5 to advance into the final 8. In the Central Division, the Minnesota Wind Chill, they also had a season low in turnovers, 11 in their 20-18 playoff win over Indianapolis. Wind Chill gave the disc away only the 11 times, and Minnesota never trailed in this game for a single second. Wind Chill breaking the AlleyCats on the game's very first point. It was tied 1-1, but then 2 more breaks for the Wind Chill in the first quarter. Indy was pesky. They wouldn't go away. They played pretty well, but the AlleyCats just could not dig out of that early hole completely. And a solid win for the Wind Chill. In fact, it was their first ever playoff victory in 6 tries. So now Minnesota ready for the 4th meeting of the year with Chicago. The Union host the Wind Chill in the Central Division Final for the 2nd year in a row. Chicago 2-1 against Minnesota this year, but interestingly, the road team has won all 3 matchups. This game's in Chicago. Minnesota knows they can win there. They did it on July 1st. So the Union and Wind Chill clash again with a berth at championship weekend at stake. It's a Sunday afternoon game at the De La Salle Institute on the south side. Remember, last year Chicago trailed by 3 into the 4th quarter of the playoff game before closing on a 5-0 rampage to stun the Wind Chill and win the game. Certainly that history is hard to completely erase or forget from anybody's mind, but there's a chance for Minnesota to write a completely different chapter this Sunday. And in the West Division, the Salt Lake Shred fell behind 2-0 early against San Diego, but then roared on a 6-0 run to take charge against the Growlers. This was a wild game played in unpredictable, windy conditions, made it super tough for both offenses to find the consistency they were seeking. San Diego closed the first half strong, got within 1 early in the 3rd, and then the Shred run off 4 consecutive breaks again, part of a 5-0 run that opened up a 16-10 lead. San Diego, again, was able to inch within 2 late in the fourth. It's crazy that Salt Lake won this game despite only scoring 1 time in the last 11 minutes of the game. But the Shred defense created 17 blocks, just made life difficult for the Growlers whenever they had the disc. So Salt Lake prevails 19-16. They sweep San Diego 3 straight meetings this year, and now they look to avoid being swept by Colorado. Salt Lake travels to face the Summit on Saturday evening in Denver. Really excited for this game. Colorado has some questions in terms of the health of some of their top O-line playmakers, like Jay Frood, Quinn Finer, Alex Atkins. I think at full strength in front of their home crowd, Colorado deserves to be the favorite, but there's something about this Salt Lake team which just gives them a chance in every game they play. 2 young, athletic, exciting expansion teams. Only one can continue their season beyond this weekend and make the Final Four in Madison. Should be a ton of fun. That's the rundown from the first weekend of playoff action. I'll take a quick timeout, and then Adam and Daniel will chime in with their thoughts on the road ahead here in the AUDL playoffs. Toss-up coming up next, right here on AUDL Weekly. We are back, and we welcome in Daniel Cohen and Adam Ruffner for today's spirited disc debate. Gentlemen, good to see you. Hope you enjoyed the playoffs this past weekend. 3 games this past weekend, 4 games coming up, and we will do our fair share of looking ahead. But topic number 1 will have us looking back a little bit and ahead to next year. So, Daniel, I'll start with you. Topic number 1, toss-up. They both won 6 games this year, and their seasons came to an end this past weekend. Who you got winning more games next year? The Philadelphia Phoenix or the Indianapolis AlleyCats?
I think I like Philly's trajectory a little bit more than Indy's this year. Next year and this year. Philly has been trending upward over the past several seasons. We saw this year everything really came together for them, and we also saw them get better throughout the season. They've found this really nice mix of maintaining a pretty good level of efficiency while still having that big play, deep threat offense that they love to put out. It reminds me of Atlanta's ascent, how they found that ideal balance. And with Indy, I'm just not so sure that they're locked in as the 3rd best team in the Central. I see Madison there, and that's still going to be tough competition. I also see a slightly larger gap between Indy and the top of the division, Minnesota, Chicago, but Philly proved they can play with New York and DC, so I would expect, 7 wins seems pretty doable for them next season.
Interesting. Adam, what do you think?
I think it's interesting that you say that there's a gap between Indy and the top of the Central when they just played Minnesota to within 2 goals in the opening round and were jockeying back and forth with Minnesota throughout the game. They didn't hold the lead, but they've won more recently against Minnesota than Philly has against DC or New York. So I think there's a little bit of a misunderstanding there with Indy, and I like Indy's ascent right now. You talk about a team on the upward swing. This team didn't have its best player this year in Travis Carpenter. It lost arguably one of its main offensive cogs in Trey Dines in the second game of the season. They were without some of their main starters even in the last half of the season, and Nick Hutton on defense. I expect Indy to be pretty contentious in the Central if they get a full-strength roster in 2023. But I also just love the Hotbird summer. James Pollard switching over to offense and being one of the best playmakers in the entire league has been one of the most fun storylines, I think, of the 2022 season. So I do expect Philly to improve in the win total. I just think Indy might jump to 8 or 9 wins in 2023 if they can stay healthy. They were within Chicago of 1 goal at home. They were within Madison 1 goal at home. They beat Madison on the road later in the season by 2 goals.
8 or 9 wins, Indy. Though. That's top of the division talk, though.
Yeah, and Pavlianis might be moving on from Chicago next year, so who knows what happens to the Union if that goes through. So, I mean, there's lots of, I think, unsettling in the Central Division heading into 2023, and I think that Indy had one of the more impressive years given some of the injuries they sustained right at the beginning of this campaign.
Spicy. Yeah, Pavel is under contract to play in Chicago next year currently, but who knows if that means he'll play there.
I expect him to fulfill that.
He is,
I do expect him to fulfill that. It'll just be interesting to see what effect it has if he's going to be commuting from presumably the West Coast. He's been such a central figure in that franchise, from practices to everything else. Who knows what happens to the Union without him running the day-to-day?
Yeah, it's a fair question. Two rising teams. Thought it was interesting to look back on their seasons and what we expect from them going forward. Let's talk about the playoffs that are coming up this weekend. Topic number 2. Adam, you go first. Which Central Division D-line star will have the bigger impact this Saturday in Chicago? The Wind Chill's Abe Coffin or the Union's Nate Goff?
Now, this is probably my favorite question from this week, because I think if you were to ask who's the more sustainable defensive star heading into this matchup, it might be Abe Coffin. After having talked to a couple of Indy O-line players this past weekend, they were insistent that Coffin's deep pulls and the way that Minnesota's defense could set up off of them was one of the biggest hindrances to the AlleyCats' offensive attack all night long. And I just think Coffin's weaponization as a defensive puller has been such an under-talked about part of why this Minnesota team ranks so consistently in the top 3 in a myriad of defensive statistics. However, I'm going to choose Nate Goff. Nate Goff just shows up in big matchups. He's started in 7 games? He's got 16 blocks, 15 blocks, something like that. He's one of the biggest defensive playmakers over the past few years. He figures to be that on Sunday night against Minnesota. He was huge last year in the fourth quarter against Minnesota in that divisional championship game, and I expect a similar performance from Goff. He just finds a way to make plays when this Union defense needs it most, and he's arguably the best one-on-one defender in the sport right now, and I expect him to come through in some way for the Chicago defense. So I'm going with Goff.
Adam, you kind of had me sold that you were taking Abe Coffin before the 180 there at the end. Daniel, what do you think?
I really like bold.
I'm taking Coffin. I was going to reference his pulling numbers too. Like, he has been one of the best pullers in the league, and it was notable, like, watching that game against Indy. Like, there was a clear advantage that the Minnesota defense has, especially when they got off to a lead. Like, a great way to protect the lead is just force the opposing offense to do these extremely long drives that take a while to get going. They really kept them out of rhythm, and those pulls were a big reason why. But aside from the pulls, it's his impact across the board. It's the D-line counterattack, which we've seen now 50% or better conversion rate in, I think, 7 straight games at this point. He's been their D-line quarterback all year. He has over 20 assists, 4th most on the team. He's also had 13 blocks this year, so I think there's just more ways for Coffin to have a big impact on this game, as opposed to Nate Goff, who might take a little bit more of a backseat offensively on the counterattack with presumably Joe White, Tim Schock, their D-line quarterbacks back in action. So I see more opportunities for Abe Coffin, so I'm going to go with him.
Adam, would you care to translate those facial expressions that we saw during Daniel's monologue?
Nate Goff not being a part of the Chicago D-line counterattack, I think, is bending the truth a little bit.
I think I said he might take a step back, considering who else they have. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just think the touch numbers are going to be there for Coffin.
I still think Goff is going to be essential in their counterattack.
Okay.
He could easily
I'm not sure all season we've had 4 topics where you two have disagreed 4 in a row. So we're 2 for 2 in disagreement.
We got 2 for 2.
Yeah, let's see if we can keep it going.
Good.
Daniel, 3 games this Saturday night. Which road team has the best chance of moving on to championship weekend? The Austin Soul, the DC Breeze, or the Salt Lake Shred?
See, if you asked me, of all 4 playoff games, which road team has the best chance of the upset, I would say Minnesota. But you narrowed it down to Saturday night. I'm going to take DC here. I honestly don't have a ton of faith in any of the three teams to pull off the road upset. But DC is the team that probably has the best chance of beating New York. They still play them super well. They've done so over the past few seasons. Never really seems to matter how many stars New York has. DC typically has enough answers. I still think DC, efficiency-wise, is going to need to play one of their best games of the season, but it's helpful that they're coming off their best game from an efficiency standpoint against Philly. Only 8 turnovers in that game. They're going to need to be at that same level to take down New York, and we at least know that they're capable of doing so. So I will take DC as the most likely.
Interesting. Adam, what do you think?
You know, I picked DC because I have thought of DC as a top 3 or 4 team all season. You can go back, reference power rankings, any swing pass episode. I love the breeze. But I think just for calamity's sake, I'm going to go with Salt Lake. I think that they've got a little bit of mojo coming off of their season sweep of the reigning West Division champions. I think that they have the athletes, especially on defense, to give some kind of matchup problems for the Summit. I still like the Summit in just a straight up matchup, but I think if we're talking most likely upsets, Salt Lake's high variance and possibility of punching with the Summit, I think, is as likely of an upset scenario as any of the 3 that have been presented. You go back to the game that they played on Memorial Day weekend when the Salt Lake Shred lost by 1. Jordan Kerr had an incredible second half trying to keep that lead on the road against the Summit, but they just couldn't pull it off. I think that Salt Lake gets up for these kind of matchups, and so I'm going to pick the Shred. I didn't pick them last week. I'm going to go with my gut on this. We'll see if it's right, but now we're 3 for 3 on disagreements. Final topic.
Yeah, I like it. Did anyone pick the Shred last week? I forget. Anyway, let's move on. Topic number 4.
I don't remember.
Adam.
Yeah.
Let's dive into all 4 divisional title games at once. What's the more likely outcome? And this is a toss-up. Home teams going 4-0 this weekend, or at least one road team pulling off an upset?
I'm going to go chalk. I just trust the home teams this year, especially after this last weekend. I think that the home teams have a pretty visible edge in a lot of these matchups. I like New York against DC for their size. I like Colorado against Salt Lake for their experience. I like Carolina against Austin, again, for their experience and their defensive handler pressure. And I like Chicago for their confidence in their matchups against Minnesota. We've seen a couple times this year where the Union trade back and forth with the wind chill, but in that fourth quarter, it's Chicago making plays. And I kind of think that that's going to happen similar to last year's Central Division Championship game. And so I'm just going to take the favorites this weekend and go with all the 1 seeds. Boring, I know.
Daniel, what do you think?
I mean, based on how this season has gone so far, would not at all surprise me if it's another sweep by the teams that you expect to win. But let's go for the 4 for 4 disagreement here. I'll go with the other side. Because, I mean, probability-wise, if you say, like, there's a 30%-ish chance on average of these lower seeds pulling off the upset, in 4 games, like, it's decently likely that one of those does happen. Like I said before, I think Minnesota has the best chance of pulling off this road upset, but again, DC would not overly surprise me if they do come out stronger than New York. It is just like this 1 game setting, so compared to other sports where you have a series, like this is going to be heavily dependent on weather. That can be a factor, just like how strong these teams come out right out of the gate. We've seen Austin play Carolina super close. Like Adam mentioned, Salt Lake almost had that win against Colorado earlier this season. So I think there's enough parity going on that one upset, I'm going to say exactly one upset will happen this weekend.
Would you like to specify which one? You don't have to.
I think you did.
Sure, I'll take Minnesota.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
All right. Well, 4 disagreements. The interesting thing about the probabilities, and I think that's a good point you made, Daniel, I was thinking, like, if the 4 favorites each have, say, an 80% chance of winning, Well, odds are all 4 of them aren't going to win, because I think there's only like a 40% chance that each of them would win if they all had 80% chances of winning.
Yeah,
something like
you gotta
that.
Do the multiply 80 by 80 by 80 by 80. I think that's right. I think the probability checks.
Say like, well, that supports my argument.
I think it tracks. I was thinking before how you do these probability calculations, but I think that's right. You like multiply 80% by 80% by 80% by 80%.
But you just made up 80%. You just made up 80%. We don't know if it's 80%.
That's arbitrary for sure. But that seems high, if anything.
Yeah, Adam, do you think these underdogs have less than a 20% chance of winning on the road? Because I think I'd give them each like a 1 in 4 chance.
I don't know. I just think that there's been such a separation this year with the home teams. I think that there's really been that just preservation of the elite this season. It seems like every single week we talk about these underdogs and the chances that they have, that ultimately the home team, the favorite, has won out. And I think the experience and the talent of these home teams is such that it's hard for me to see an upset this weekend. I wanted an upset last weekend, didn't happen, so I'm riding the favorites. House money.
I'm keeping my hopes up.
Fair.
We're gonna get an upset.
We have seen some crazy upsets in this round
too.
Historically, we've seen some crazy upsets in this round. Thinking back to, when Seattle beat San Francisco in 2016, that was a big upset. And then New York shocked Toronto in 2018. So, I mean, the great Roughnecks Flyers games, you could look at some of those as upsets through the years. So hopefully we've got some great games coming up. Look forward to watching them this weekend and talking about them with y'all next week. Daniel and Adam, enjoy the games, and talk to you soon. Thank you. That's Daniel Cohen and Adam Ruffner. You can hear them talk more Ultimate on the Swing Pass podcast, wherever you get your podcast. Coming up next, Upline and Out of Bounds. Excited for this Matt Smith conversation with Colorado's Joe Smash Anderson. That's coming up after the break.
What's up, AUDL world, and welcome to another playoff episode of Upline and Out of Bounds. Today, I am joined by an absolute league legend, Mr. Joe Smash Anderson, currently out of the Summit, but previously out of the Connecticut Constitution. How's it going, Joe?
Feeling great. Happy Tuesday, Matt.
Absolutely. Happy filming day. Happy to have you on. I'm excited for the audience to get to know you a little more, so we're going to jump right in. First question for you, hometown.
I'm from New York City, New York, Manhattan specifically, Upper West Side, Harlem.
Yep, I know you got a lot of New York pride, and we're going to get into that a little later. But next question is age.
As of August 13th, I am 36 years old.
All right, well, happy birthday. And shout out holding it down for us 30 plus. Love to see it. Next question. Did you attend college? If so, what degree did you obtain?
My degrees are in early childhood education, leadership, social equity, diversity, equity, and inclusion, things like that. They're all kind of lumped into the same degree, but ultimately I care a lot about child development. That's what I studied in college.
Very cool. And next question is, what are you up to these days? What's your current occupation or job?
My current occupation is with the Ultimate Lending team. I'm studying to become a loan officer, but I've also started my own childcare company, and I'm hoping to be able to expand in the Colorado area as well.
That's awesome, and best of luck with that. We're going to move on to the Ultimate side of things now. So first question there is position on the field.
I'm a rail cutter, but I could also be a flex handler. I really do like to break the mark, but I'm rather tall, so I think it's better for me to be downfield whenever possible.
Makes sense. And why don't you fill the audience in on your ultimate origin story?
I learned how to play in New York City in 2000. Chris Lehman, a Philadelphia product who was teaching in New York, put a disc in my hand for the first time and really gave a bunch of us from the city a lot of encouragement. He did that by taking us to the Amherst Invitational, which for those who have played a high school ultimate know that Amherst is a very good school for ultimate Frisbee. And we got to see their trophy case, and that's when the fire really lit that I wanted to be good at the sport.
That's awesome. Shout out Youth Ultimate, making it happen and creating stars. Love to
That's
see
right.
it. All right, last one here is favorite AUDL moment so far.
My favorite AUDL moment was the first time I ever got to step on a field and call myself a professional. I think people of our generation, and I say our generation of late 30s, this is our professional experience, and this was our time to step on the field and show what professional ultimate meant to us. I'm glad that it's lasted this long. Our iteration of being able to last this long, I think a lot of us are very proud of who started way back in 2012. I think that the AUDL has come a long way, and I'm pretty proud to have stepped on the field, and to say that I was one of the first to step on the field of our generation is important to me.
Absolutely, man. Like I said, absolute legend and icon, man. But now that the audience knows you a little bit better, we're going to jump into today's game segment, which is a classic, fill in the blanks. It's pretty easy. I got a couple sentences for you. You fill in the blanks and you give me a little bit of why. So, First one here. The thing I miss most about living in New York is blank.
Bodegas. Bacon, egg, and cheeses in the morning.
Love it. Right off the bat, he knows. Bodegas. Number one answer. No bodegas in Colorado?
Not where I live.
All right. Kicking things off hot, confident. Bodegas. Next question here. Blank is the best Dominican snack, food, or meal?
Tostones. That's definitely a hot take, but I definitely like tostones. A little ketchup. For those who don't know, tostones are plantains that are flattened and double fried.
Okay. I like you got an answer lined up. Got your Dominican roots out there. Love to see it. Next one here, flipping to Frisbee a little bit. The biggest surprise of the 2022 Summit season has been blank.
Keeping my health. I think that that's a big deal. A lot of people who have played in the AUDL know that the season is very long, and so I think that along with my health, being nominated the captain of the Colorado Summit is the biggest prize. Being as old as I am, to still be in a position of leadership is very special to me, because it's something that I can't do by myself. I need my teammates to have that confidence in me, and to trust that my leadership is valuable to them. And so the biggest prize for me, besides my health, is definitely being nominated as one of the captains of the Colorado Summit. I'm very proud of that.
Very cool. Love to hear it. All right, we got the last one here. It's a double blank. So, blank and blank are the two must-do activities when visiting Colorado. What do you got to do when you're out there?
When you come to Colorado, you got to get a Patagonia jacket and you got to go outside. That's what I learned when you came here. Coming from New York City, people know, you get Timberland boots, can't really get those dirty. You get yourself a North Face. That's not what it's like in Colorado. They use boots for functional hiking, and it's not necessarily for style. And so it's, connecting with nature is a big thing out here. And so I encourage anybody to do it. It's really helped with my mental health, moving from New York City. And so I encourage people to get their chi correct and go into the mountains.
Absolutely. I love it, man. Buy a Patagonia jacket, get some boots, and get outside. I love it. I love it. All right, man. Well, I could talk all day with you, but unfortunately, we are out of time. Before we get out of here, though, any last shout-outs you want to give?
Hey, I want to give a shout-out to the Ultimate Lending Team. We can help you get a house in 49 states except New York. So we can help you out. Ultimate Lending Team. Holler at me.
All right, absolutely. We'll make sure we get that website up there so people can take a look. But I got to say, man, most excited to see you take on the Salt Lake Shred this upcoming weekend. Good luck.
It's going to be fun.
But for now, back to Evan.
All right, Matt, thanks for bringing Joe Smash onto the show. He's the only member of the 2012 Connecticut Constitution who's still alive in the 2022 AUDL playoffs. And we'll see if the Summit can take care of business against the Shred to make it all the way to championship weekend in Madison. 1 week from now, we'll be just 2 days away from semifinal Friday night at Breese Stevens Field. Looking forward to creating many memories over the next week and a half. But for now, that's our show tonight. My thanks to Adam Ruffner, Daniel Cohen, Matt Smith, Joe Anderson, and our editor extraordinaire, Luke Johnson. My name's Evan Lepler. Thanks so much for joining me tonight. Enjoy all the Playoff Ultimate coming up this weekend, and I'll talk to you right back here next Wednesday.